Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the LFS News Update on Monday, the 2nd of October at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. We have a lot to get through, and including this big story that we have on the screen for you. Liverpool have kind of set out their stall against the PGMOL. We'll go into the whole detail of the VAR controversy over the weekend in the Liverpool-Tottenham game. We'll talk about the fallout afterwards, the PGMOL statement, the refereeing team's statement, the Liverpool's actual statement that they released yesterday evening, plus reactions from the likes of pundits, the likes of Gary Neville. He's made his point of view known, so we'll go through all of that on this news update. So, let's just really bring it all back to where everything started and why Liverpool are so frustrated and annoyed at VAR and their decisions and the PGMOL and their initial statement. We'll give you the initial PGMOL statement first because I think that's massively important that we see exactly what the referee's point of view was and what the referees think. And whether that's correct or not, that's up to you. But let's just have a look at the PGMOL statements. This is what the PGMOL. So the PGMOL are the refereeing body in England for the Premier League. So they are the body of people that provide referee training, the VAR. They appoint referees to certain different games, create refereeing teams, tell referees where and where they cannot go and what they can and cannot do, all that type of stuff. And they do the whole training side of things as well. The PGMOL are basically the representative for referees in England. And let's just see what they said. So the PGMOL acknowledge a significant human error occurred during the first half of Tottenham Hotspur versus Liverpool. The goal by Luis Diaz was disallowed for offside by the on-field team of match officials. This was a clear and obvious factual error and should have resulted in a goal being awarded through VAR intervention. However, the VAR failed to intervene. PGMOL will conduct a full review into the circumstances which led to the error. Now, you read that statement and really, what information are they telling you that you don't already know? I mean, they're just rehashing simple information. We know that the disallowed goal for Luis Diaz was not. It was offside by on-field referee. You know, we seen the assistant put his flag up and flag for offside. The referee had no objections to that, so the goal wasn't given on the field. We know that already, and they've cleared. This is a clear and obvious factual error. That whole part of the statement baffles me as well. Clear and obvious factual error. How can you have a clear and obvious factual error? If a VAR is a factual decision, how can you get that wrong? I'm baffled how human error can cause a factual error. Am I being dumb here? Because they talk about a significant human error occurring, but then they talk about a factual error. Well, if there's a factual error, was that the system that didn't work? Was the VAR not communicating correctly with the referee? Maybe that's the human error they're talking about, but that's not the factual error. There was a factual error and the goal wasn't given, but at the same time, can you call that a human error? I don't know. I don't actually know what the referees are trying to get at here. And then they talk about that the VAR failed to intervene. Why did the VAR fail to intervene? You're not going to tell us that? Did you not know this information? You say you're going to conduct a full review. You're giving us a very vague statement right after the game, which is not going to clear up anything. You may as well just say, they're going to conduct a full review. We've spotted something's happened. We'll wait and see what happens in the future. Graham in the chat says, this is very serious. We cannot just let this go. Exactly, indeed. I mean, I think the PGMOL are trying to put out this vague statement to try and cover over the cracks, when really, in the serious case, this has actually infuriated fans more. And we'll see this. I'll come to the to Liverpool's statement very shortly. But the PGMOL statement has not actually kind of put the fire out. It's actually put fuel onto the fire and made it even worse, because they don't actually know what they're saying anymore. I mean, I look at this statement. It's a half-hearted statement that is put out nearly every week when they talk about a refereeing mistake. Look at how many times football clubs have been apologised to by VAR officials, by the likes of Howard Webb, who's ahead of the referees at the moment in the Premier League. How many times has he had to come out and apologise to certain clubs for incorrect decisions? By the way, Liverpool haven't received an apology, by the way, about all this. Not that we've received public information on that. Maybe they have in private, but that information hasn't been stated in the public domain. They haven't apologised, so we don't know about that, whatever that's all about. But how you can get something this wrong and then try and gloss it over as a simple human error. I mean, reports have been coming out since the game that the VAR in the hub thought that the on-field team, the officials at the game, had given the goal, and he was checking to make sure that that was the correct decision. So the VAR from the very start, from reports that we've heard, hadn't the correct information to start doing a review, never mind actually getting the correct decision. So he had the incorrect information from the very beginning. So how can you miscommunicate that? The referee surely would have said, this is disallowed. The flag goes up and the goal is disallowed. Simple practice in refereeing terms. Simple practice. And surely with the referee having a constant being in constant conversation with the VAR surely should have heard that. And if he didn't hear it, surely his assistant would have heard that. And if he didn't hear that, surely the guy operating the system, the VAR system, would have heard that. There's 3 people there that haven't heard the referee saying, I've given an offside decision. How are you that incompetent that you don't even hear that? So then, from that point on, they have the incorrect information. They think the on-field team is given a goal, and then they're just going to do a quick check. And that's why whenever we've seen the actual live coverage and the live feed from the VAR hub, when we see the kind of the pictures come up and it shows you what the VAR screen is, and they're drawing the lines and things. That's why we didn't see the lines, because they didn't need the lines, because it was a clear and obvious decision. It was quite clearly that Luis Diaz was onside, and because the VAR had thought, oh well, they've given this on the field, let me just double check. He double checks it, says yes, that's onside. But how, at that point, what are you communicating to the referee there? He communicates check complete. I mean, I'm baffled as to how they've got this so wrong, and they're so stickler for sticking to kind of script prompts that don't always work for football. I mean, the prompt of check complete. The check complete is so vague. What does that mean? Tell him what you're checking for. And then if there's a mistake in there, if you say, I'm checking to make sure this is onside, and the referee will go, no, we've given it as an offside decision, and check for if it's offside or not. But the fact that they completely miscommunicated that shows clear incompetence. And we're yet to hear the audio coming out. Almost 48 hours on since this incident happened. Yet to hear any audio clips that we've seen previously. Remember, a couple of weeks ago, they released a bunch of clips. A bunch of audio clips in Howard Webb and Michael Owen. Why Michael Owen, I don't know. Anyway, Michael Owen and Howard Webb went through those decisions, and they chatted through it and talked about the process of referees. If they don't do this, it looks even worse on them if they don't release the audio. We need to see the audio of this. We need to hear what actually happened, because the more that there's lack of transparency and the lack of information, the more that there's going to be said about this. Anyway, I could ramble on about this statement all day because it's so infuriating as to how vague and how ridiculous these 3 paragraphs are. Horrendous. Let's move on to Liverpool's statement, because Liverpool's statement is really, really crucial, and this could be huge. This is major from Liverpool Football Club. Let's just have a look at Liverpool's statement. This is the first slide of it. So we fully accept the pressures that match officials work under, but these pressures are supposed to be alleviated, not exacerbated, by the existence and implementation of VAR. Quite fair. It is therefore unsatisfactory that sufficient time was not afforded to allow the correct decision to be made, and that there was no subsequent intervention. I'm going to come back to that, because that's another good point that many people did pick up on. That such failings have already been categorized as significant human error is also unacceptable. Any and all outcomes should be established only by the review and with full transparency. This is vital for the reliability of future decision making, as it applies to all clubs, with learnings being used to make improvements to processes in order to ensure this kind of situation cannot occur again. In the meantime, we will explore the range of options available given the clear need for escalation and resolution. That final sentence is probably the most the most significant of that whole statement. The fact that Liverpool are going to escalate this and are exploring their options. What are their options? No one knows. They're exploring those options, and it will be fascinating to see in the next few days what happens there. Let's go back, actually. I want to go through this statement fully and examine it. If we go back to the very start of it, the very first paragraph is pretty good. It's pretty simple. The fact that they're saying that pressures should be alleviated, not exacerbated, by VAR and its existence on referees. Referees, in an ideal world, VAR should be there to make sure the referee doesn't have the pressure of, if I get this wrong, I'm going to be punished for it. And if this is wrong, I could change the outcome of this game. But it's actually become that. It has. The referee in a game now cannot make a decision without thinking, am I going to be overturned by the VAR? If I get this wrong and if VAR don't catch it, it's going to be falling back on me. And the whole complexity of VAR and how complicated everything has been since VAR has come in. You know, you think about it, every season there's a change in the standards, there's a change in the people running the system, there's a change in the training, there's more implementation, there's a lot more controversy, a lot more disillusionment between fans and clubs and referees, and the fact that everyone has a different opinion and everyone sees it different ways, but that's all that really matters is what the referee sees, and even they cannot get a consistent point of view. The referees, a group of referees, cannot get a consistent form, and that the pressure of being a referee, I mean, it's not easy being a referee in one of the biggest games of the weekend, and I'm not saying that that's not an excuse for Simon Hooper, who was the referee at Liverpool Tottenham at the weekends. That's not an excuse, but what I would say though is it is a tough job, but VAR was initially implemented to make sure that the referees got the correct decisions and that they were kind of being helped into getting those correct decisions in the moments that are needed. In huge moments, you know, VAR was initially introduced to alleviate and to get rid of any massive big refereeing errors. So this idea of human error baffles me, because that's exactly what VAR was introduced to avoid. You know, initially they talk about there wasn't enough time afforded. That's another huge point. You think of how quickly that decision was made. That all comes back down to the miscommunication, because if the VAR thinks that the goal has been given on field, he's not going to take longer than he needs to ratify that decision, and that's the point being made. Liverpool actually feel that that the time wasn't given for the referee to fully explain his decision making, and also then confirm that and kind of transfer that information to the VAR, and then for the VAR to have a check and make sure that that was correct. None of kind of due process was followed. They kind of rushed the decision, get through it. We've not given it on field. You think we've given it. We're going to move on because let's move on. You know, it was very quick and very fast moving that decision was made. But I think ultimately that comes down to probably the initial miscommunication that the VAR thought that the goal was given, so he's not going to waste any more time than he should do. So that, I don't think that's probably more than it needs to be. It all comes back to the initial feeling. They talk about such feelings being categorized as significant human error is unacceptable, and say that all outcomes should be established only by the review and with full transparency. That's another very good point. The fact that they have made an excuse, but then at the very start, and talked about significant human error being the problem, but then saying that the problem, the initial whole outcome and the problem that occurred will be kind of examined by a review, you're kind of contradicting yourself, because you're making an excuse and kind of planting it in people's heads that It was already a significant human error. It's a significant human error. It's human error. People make mistakes. That whole idea of that humans can't get everything right, we're not robots kind of thing. But at the same time, then you're going to call it to review. But that's kind of like saying that someone's murdered someone and it going to court for due process and trial, but then someone coming out and saying, I know you've done this, and revealing all sorts of derogatory information about that person, and already trying to plant the seed in the jury's head of this is what he's done, and kind of giving sly information and kind of disrupting that whole trial. And that's kind of the point here, is the fact that the PGMOL have said it's significant human error, but they don't. How do you know that? And if you know that, then give us more information. But you can't then give us that bit of information and say that the rest of the information will be revealed by review, because then you've just made an assumption, and then you've made yourself look even more stupid. So, baffling. The second half, and the final sentence in this, is one thing that I'm really keeping an eye on. What are Liverpool's options? They say they're going to explore the range of options available. What are those options? No one actually knows what these options are that they're going to explore. Could they kind of escalate this and bring it to court? Could they actually go to court about this and say this referee failing has actually stopped us from getting a point or even 3 points out of a huge game? And the point has been made by multiple people. Liverpool have lost the league title by a single point previously. A single point. Now, a simple and it's been brought back to poor refereeing decisions multiple times. If this is another case, Liverpool have completely in their rights. Now, I'm not saying Liverpool are going to go for the title, but even a top 4 race. These decisions have huge impacts on clubs' futures. You know, we talk about, the massive gap between relegation, the amount of financial impact that a relegation from the Premier League has on a football club. We talk about that. One refereeing decision could relegate a football club, or complete incompetence from a refereeing point of view. If you calculate that up to a season, you could count that out as a significant number of points lost by a significant team, and that could see them relegated. Now, that's excuses, but at the same time, it's a very good point. And Liverpool are probably exploring this option of, we have had significant refereeing decisions lose us points that could have given us not only trophies but significant money. And that's the point being made here, is that Liverpool lost that game by a last-minute own goal. They had 9 men for 35 minutes and did not concede a goal, but they conceded in the last 30 seconds. Now, I'm not saying that's the referee's fault. I'm not saying the second red card was definitely a red card, no doubt about it. The first red card was ridiculous, and the disallowing of a Luis Diaz goal. Remember, Luis Diaz's goal came after the red card, and it was 0-0. Luis Diaz's goal was disallowed, and then Spurs went up the other end and scored. If Luis Diaz's goal had been given, that could have changed the whole complete complexion of that football game. The fact that Liverpool went behind and had to come back level to come into half-time kind of changes the whole outcome of this, and could have changed the whole trajectory of the game. So one refereeing decision could impact the game, and has impacted the game massively. Because they talk about goals change games. If Liverpool have taken the lead in that game rather than going behind, who knows what could have happened from then on in. Maybe Spurs could have won the game anyway, but that's not the point. The point of the fact is, it's a refereeing decision that has changed the outcome of the game, rather than the actual football that has changed the game. That's the point being made here by Liverpool, and the fact that they need to explore their options, because an escalation and a resolution is clearly needed, and that's the point they're making. And they're not saying this for their point of view, and a lot of people have said, Liverpool are doing this just out of their own interest. They say in the statement, it applies to all clubs. So, the whole point of every club is affected by this, and every club should be on the side of clearly seeing a full review of refereeing decisions, because every club gets shafted by these decisions. Every single weekend we see controversy surrounding refereeing decisions and VAR decisions. If it's not resolved properly, then where are we going to go? And there's so much more to this, and there's so much more to talk about on the VAR outrage here. Honestly, There's so many layers to this. It's unreal. The fact that the two people that were working in the VAR booth for that game were in the United Arab Emirates 48 hours prior to that on a Thursday night, and 48 hours later they were on one of the biggest Premier League games of the weekend, if not the biggest Premier League game of the weekend. Two sides unbeaten before that game, and come in and made a horrendous error that has cost one football club a significant point, or a significant 3 points. The fact that that has occurred is a lot bigger than what words can even describe. You know, the fact that that is huge. The fact that were in a completely other side of the world 48 hours before that game. And yes, they weren't running the line, or they weren't refereeing the actual game. They were even in a more scrutinised position. They were in the VAR hub. You need to have a fresh mind. It's not all about a fresh body and fresh kind of physical state. It's about your mental state. When you travel that distances, you're not in the right state of mind to work a strenuous job straight afterwards. So, I'm not having this. This idea that they were in a complete different country. And there's picture evidence. And it's not like this is a dubious report that no one really can corroborate. It's been corroborated, it's been confirmed, and you've seen it. Michael Oliver, who was on VAR for Nottingham Forest Brentford, on the Sunday, the day after, he was also refereeing the game in the United Arab Emirates. So that's 3 refereeing officials on 2 huge games around about 48 to 72 hours after that game, and the 2 of them have made significant errors, and there's a bit of debate about Michael Oliver and his VAR decisions in the Nottingham Forest Brentford game, but we're not going to get into that because we will be here all day. But the outrage on this is pretty fair from all points of view, and the fact that there was so much outrage from all corners of the footballing world, all corners of different, forget about fans and forget about who they support, everyone was on board about this, that this was one of the worst refereeing performances that they had ever seen. Not only refereeing performances, but VAR performances that they had ever seen. And that's ridiculous, absolutely ridiculous how this was allowed to happen. But we will see what Liverpool decide to do and what their options are. Brian in the chat says, good afternoon guys and girls, this is beyond a joke and Liverpool should be given the draw and a point for the result. Now this is another point that a lot of people have made, and it's not something I would particularly agree with in the standard of things. I mean, what good... I get the point of Liverpool should get a point back, and if that goal was then allowed it should be 2-2, but the goal was so early in a game that there was so much of the game left that you can't say that goal, if you give that goal, then everything else that happens after that is fair. I mean, if Liverpool go 1 up, maybe Spurs don't score again, or maybe Spurs end up not coming back and Liverpool leading and going into half-time. Does it affect Jurgen Klopp's comments at half-time? Does it affect all the tactics that they do? Then do the changes that he makes, bringing Diogo Jota on, Diogo Jota then going and getting 2 yellow cards, that could be a massive impact. So it's a whole kind of domino effect of things. So I don't know about getting the point back. I can see where it would be fair, because Liverpool would have a claim, the fact that there is a point to be argued there, that they've been completely kind of scammed and robbed of a point. And, you know, and more to the fact, remember this game last season, Tottenham-Liverpool? Do you remember there was a red card given to Andy Robertson, but there was a yellow card given to Harry Kane, and there was a load of outrage about that and VAR decisions? It seems to be, when Tottenham face Liverpool, there is major VAR kind of incompetence. I mean, I don't know if they can't kind of deal with the fixture, but why is it every time that Liverpool play Spurs, or Spurs play Liverpool, whatever way you want to look at it, that there's always some sort of crazy VAR drama that comes to nothing? It's baffling. We're actually, just before we go, because we've a lot more to do about this, let's just listen. I'm going to have a listen to Jurgen Klopp's comments, because Jurgen Klopp makes a very, very good point in his interview. Let's hear his reaction to this VAR error.
I don't know where to start, Jurgen. Perhaps you decide where to start on that game. Yeah, people might think because of the late goal for Tottenham, we didn't get anything out of this game. But that's not true. We didn't get a result, that's true. But I learned so many things about my boys today. I couldn't be more proud. Told them already directly after the game. This was absolutely outstanding. Angus told me directly after the game when we shake hands. What a mentality. That was second to none. With 10 men, we were still creating, we were still dangerous. And then the ref thought, on top of all the other things, what happened today, we make it even more difficult. And then we had, with 8 players, it's difficult. But we still had moments. So, but not as dangerous as before anymore. And so, yes, so many things happened today which were not going our way. And that's obviously then really difficult on a day like this to get something out of it. So close, but in the end, still nothing.
Jurgen Klopp talking there in his post-match interview about that game and those decisions. Nothing really typical, there's a lot of talk about Jurgen Klopp being very emotional in post-match interviews, and right, we want managers to be emotional. But there's nothing really there that kind of caused a lot of outrage. I think Jurgen Klopp dealt with that pretty well. I mean, he really took that point of view and didn't really step out of line, according to the FA. Let's also talk about Gary Neville. Gary Neville come out and was talking about these, was very vocal on Sky Sports on the coverage following the game about these poor decisions for referees, and talked about how outrageous it is that referees keep getting this wrong, and something doesn't feel right in recent weeks, whatever that means, about refereeing decisions. And to a point, I kind of agree with him that something seems strange, that referees just don't seem to be coming to the correct decisions a lot more often now. It's like they're kind of playing a prank on everyone, that let's see how shit we can be this week. Something weird seems to be going on. I don't know what it is, but referees, they just don't seem to be getting things right. It's getting more and more outrageous as the weeks go on. I mean, we're only in the 7th week of the Premier League season, and we've already seen some of the most outrageous decisions that we've seen ever given in Premier League games. Even before VAR existed, there wasn't this many ridiculous decisions. But I'm going to read out Gary Neville and what he said about Liverpool releasing that statement. Gary Neville called the Liverpool statement a mistake. He said, writing on X, he said, Jurgen Klopp handled the situation well last night after the game. Most football fans will have had empathy with what happened and recognised it was wrong. However, Liverpool's statement tonight is a mistake. Talk of exploring all options. What does that mean? And sporting integrity are dangerous phrases, along with being vague and aggressive. Now, I think Gary Neville, let's just remember who he played for. I know he tries to talk about this unbiased and that he doesn't want to give a biased point of view and he's for the rights of football and all this. He played for Manchester United. Does he really want Liverpool to get this point? I'm not going to try and go down this argument of he's taking the Manchester United side of things and it's football tribalism, but let's get real here. Liverpool have made a statement in totally within their means. They are not happy with the refereeing decision and they're going to explore their options. Referees have made horrendous decisions, and it was about time that someone actually stepped up and took a stance against it. Liverpool are trying to do that. They've released a statement and are trying to explore the options. Whatever that means, we don't know. It is quite vague, and I agree with Gary on that point. It is quite vague, but Liverpool have to be vague, because if they take legal action and they come out and make a statement prior to making that legal action, then they could be countersued or countersued for making those phrases. So they have to be purposefully vague. They're not being vague because they don't know what they're saying. They're being vague on purpose. Aggressive, I think, is a bit weird to say. They're putting their stance out and making it known. Whether Liverpool actually do explore other options and do further this is another question. But the point that they're making is that they are not going to be taken for fools, and they are not going to allow this to happen week in, week out, when things are going wrong in the Premier League and when referees are getting simple decisions completely incorrect. It's got past the point of it being dubious, and it got past the point of it being up to the referee's opinion, it being an opinion-based thing. It comes down to the fact that they are getting simple, factual, quite simplistic decisions that should be second nature to them, so horrendously wrong. That's the point here. The reason Liverpool are making that statement is because they are getting things so horrendously wrong. Week in, week out, without excuse. And it's the same statement that the PGMOL release every single week. VAR has made a mistake. The referees made a mistake that VAR didn't intervene. The referee gave a red card when it shouldn't have been a red card. We disagree with this. The referee's going to learn from this. He's been taken off the next week of fixtures. We've seen it so many times. Does it work? Does it change anything? No, it doesn't. So Liverpool are completely in their rights to want something different. Why else would you not want something different? Why would you want the same kind of rhetoric of they're going to do more training or they're going to get a different set of referees? They're all shit. Let's get it real. It's not one referee or two referees or a small group of referees that are getting these decisions wrong. Every single referee in that roster has got a decision wrong, and that's fine. Totally fine. But they're making simple decisions and they're getting them wrong every single time. How? How are they getting them this wrong every single week? And Howard Webb talks about it's going to take time for referees to become accustomed to this, and they're going to learn these new systems and they're going to learn this new way of working. Well, clearly it's not working. We're 7 weeks into the season and nothing has changed from week 1, where we see the most horrendous decisions, to week 7, where we're still seeing the most horrendous decisions and the most awfully kind of ridiculous decisions. They're coming up with excuses upon excuses here. Where do you go from this? This is why I completely agree with what Liverpool are saying. The fact that it just can't go on. All clubs are being affected by this. All 20 Premier League clubs are being affected by these awful decisions that are going absolutely nowhere. And every single week the same rhetoric comes out. Nothing actually changes. So Liverpool are completely correct to want something different. Whether they do explode, whether they do go with other options, whatever that means, whether they do eventually go and explore other options and kind of take this further, is again, as I said, another point and another fact of the matter. But the fact that they're coming out and making a point of it and saying that we're not going to stand for this anymore is the right thing to do. Because if you just sit back and let it happen, why would the PGMOL change? They're going to complete releasing statement after statement, and when managers can't come out and say anything, players can't come out and say anything, the club has to release it in an official statement. Because if Jurgen Klopp comes out and says the referee got that wrong and he's making awful decisions, he gets fined. He gets fined by the FA. A player comes out and says it, they're going to get fined. Alexis McAllister made a point on social media and talked about Spurs having 12 players on the pitch, insinuating that the referee was the 12th player for Spurs. And he's possibly going to be fined by the FA now for saying something like that with someone jokingly on social media. But you can't say anything out of line, and you get fined instantly. It's almost like you can't have an opinion. The referees can have their opinions and can have their decisions all they want, but if a player or a manager or anyone outside of that system comes out and says something kind of out of line or out of the scripted statements, they kind of get fined and they're kind of disciplined by the FA. It's ridiculous. Jurgen Klopp should be able to come out in an interview and say that the referee got it wrong. The referee got it wrong. He had an awful performance, and something different needs to be done. But if he does come out and say that, the FA will say that it's derogatory against the referee and it's harming the referee's harming his mental state. Wise up, would you? These referees are not children. They understand that they're in a high-pressured situation, and if they couldn't handle it, they wouldn't be in the job. But the fact that Jurgen Klopp can't come out and say anything, and it has to be a club statement coming out and saying something, gives you much more of a point that it's a dictatorship rather than a democracy. They don't come out and allow you to have an opinion anymore about these types of things. Gary Neville can have an opinion, but Jurgen Klopp can't have an opinion. Liverpool players can't have an opinion. They actually played on the pitch with the referee. I think they would know more than anybody else kind of how the referee's feeling, because he could talk to them. But if we hear from the referee, maybe we'll get a different point of view. We're not going to hear from the referees either. That's another point. They kind of want to protect these referees and kind of hide them away like they're treasured objects. They're referees, they're human beings. If they come out and talk and do an interview, maybe people will be able to understand why they make decisions that they make. But if you don't come out and let them do that, then there's no obvious reason as to, or an obvious explanation as to why they've made their decisions. So then you're kind of in this whole situation of, well, no one actually knows why they've made the decision. And they're going to do an internal review, but what does that mean? What is an internal review going to do? It's just baffling how this is all happening, and it all comes back from a simple decision. They could have avoided all this, completely avoided all this, if they'd given the right decision. But we'll wait and see what comes of Liverpool, what they try and do, and what their whole opinion is, and their whole exploring their other options, what that actually means, what they're going to do about that. And we'll see what the PGMOL do. Yet to hear the audio, by the way, of that whole situation. That audio conversation between the VAR and that whole situation. And there's a lot of people that are coming out and saying, you know, I'm looking at different people's views online, and they're all saying the same thing. Why has the audio not been released? Why has the audio not been released? Can we have an explanation on that? Why are we not getting the audio that would give us the context of what the referees actually said? You know, what did Simon Hooper say to the VAR that made him think that Simon Hooper had given the goal on field? What did the VAR say to the referee that made the referee think that he'd made the correct decision? We need to know this, because they were so quick to come out and kind of expel this whole set of stuff, or five decisions they come out and gave the audio to, that were kind of different, whether they agreed with them, whether they're correct or not. They're holding back on this one, and it's strange as to why. And that's probably why Liverpool have made the statement, because not much has actually happened, and we'll wait and see. We will wait and see what actually comes of this. There's a Premier League game tonight, Fulham against Chelsea. There's build up to that, and we will see if the Premier League release any information prior to that. Whether Howard Webb makes an appearance on the coverage of that tonight, we will find out and see. But for me, any of this, all of it seems to be just completely outrageous how they've got away with this and how this has been allowed to happen. And it's come to a point where people have just got so frustrated that enough is enough. Like, Liverpool have got to the point where enough is enough, really, and the referee's making these awful decisions. It's come to an end, and Liverpool are ready for something different rather than the same old statement every week. So, who knows? But it's just baffling. And one thing I picked up on, I read just before I come on to talk about this, at the Times chief football reporter Henry Winter kind of put 6 points. He made 6 points as to what could be changed to make refereeing better. And I'm just going to talk about some of those. So he talks about audio being released, actual audio of what the officials are communicating, like we see with the NFL and like we see with rugby. The officials come out and declare their decisions. We've seen it in the Women's World Cup in the summer, where the referee makes a decision, goes to the screen, and comes out and declares that decision to the stadium, and it's released on the stadium speakers and things like that, and fans actually know what's actually going on, because that's another problem. The fact that fans have no idea what's going on in the stadium. There's 60, 70, whatever thousand people sitting in a stadium, completely clueless as to what VAR is saying, to what the referee's actually going to give, and what the decision is. And that should be cleared up. So he talks about that there should be audio. He talks about that there needs to be an improvement in the standards of refereeing. He talks about that it's not a great generation of referees, and talks about academy kids, and talks about kind of fast tracking some of them into refereeing, which at a younger age, growth in that kind of aspect is always a good thing. The semi-automated offside, where it doesn't come down to a person drawing lines, it comes down to automated. We've seen that in UEFA competitions and in FIFA competitions, where it's semi-automated. It's almost completely kind of computer-based, where offside is offside, and it's factual, and there's no intervention, very little intervention at all from human beings. So it makes it a much more kind of palatable decision because it's actually been factually checked. Also, about intervention after the restart. Now, this is something that's been an issue we've seen in a couple of weeks, where the referee blows the whistle and VAR can't intervene. Once the whistle's gone, that's the end of the game. That's the end of that moment. And when the referee restarts the game, anything that VAR was going to check from the previous phase of play becomes voided because the game's continued on. And that's another thing he talked about 10 seconds after the restart, there should be enough for emergency intervention. That's seems to be a good one. That seems pretty fair. VAR specialists, someone that focuses on VAR and then isn't rotated to do a match as a fourth official or a referee. So the likes we've seen with Michael Oliver being a referee on one game and then in the same weekend doing a VAR. There should be a set group of people that do VAR and a set group of people that do refereeing and assistant refereeing and being the fourth official. There should be a group of people that are at the game and a group of people that are always not at the game and in a VAR booth. So it becomes more specialised rather than everybody rotating and making a whole kind of fair system. Making it a specialist system where the more you do VAR, the more times you work on the VAR and work in the booth, the more specialised you become in that whole system. And that just seems to be a bit better. Probably a really good idea. And of course, the whole idea of referees shouldn't be in a complete other country 48 hours before refereeing a game or being involved in VAR for a game. The fact that the two VAR officials, the VAR and the assistant VAR, were in the United Arab Emirates 2 days before that. He talks about, Henry Winter that is, talks about the whole idea of not allowing a referee, kind of limiting their kind of travel 36 hours or 48 hours, 36 to 48 hours before a game that they're refereeing, which seems to be pretty fair because they need to be in a fit state, but also need to be in a good mental state. They need to be well rested and well recovered and ready to go into a new game with a fresh mind rather than lingering on a few things and kind of running through decisions and hoping that they work it out. So all of that, it all comes down to that, and I cannot believe that I've been speaking on this for almost 45 minutes. But it's that complex. There's so many layers to this whole situation. You have to talk for such a long time to get all the not only all the information, but the correct information, and make sure that it is declared correctly and spoke about with complete and utter, basically completely and utterly information based rather than anything else. But I think I've gone on a pretty long rant. I think I'm going to leave it there because if I go any longer, I might have a light head in a moment because I'm that frustrated with what we've heard this weekend. The excuses, the terrible refereeing decisions, the complete kind of lack of transparency from the officials. We will see what comes of this, but the only thing that could come from, only good can come from actually talking about this and not being happy with it. Because the longer it gets brushed under the carpet and kind of hidden away, the worse it's actually going to become. And it's come to a point where it's been kind of hoisted away. It's been kept in the dark for so long that it's kind of bubbled over, and one decision has caused so much kind of outrage from the whole of the footballing community, the whole of the Premier League fans, and the players, managers, clubs. It's been bubbling over for quite a few weeks since the start of the season, and 7 weeks in, it's finally just burst out, and it's come to a point where no one can really take it anymore. We will see what to the Premier League say about this, the PGMOL, and of course what Liverpool want to do in the future here. But it now comes to a point where we actually don't know what's going to happen, and we will find out in due course. But one thing we know for certain: this isn't the end of the VAR rage and the fact that VAR are getting decisions wrong. We hope that they can fix it, but do we really have any belief that it's going to get fixed instantly? No, we do not. We're probably going to be talking about this for the rest of the season as it continues, but at least we can talk about it. At least we can freely give our opinions, something that managers and players can't actually do without having to fork out money to an already corrupt institution in the FA. But we'll not go there because we will genuinely be here all day. Thank you very much for listening and watching in the LFS News Update. We'll be back with more of these hopefully in the future. If you enjoyed them, hit that like button and subscribe, and turn on post notifications so you don't miss any of these live news updates as we do them. Plus, we have Fulham against Chelsea tonight. We'll have live commentary and live audio commentary and live match mapping on that one. That is from 7:50 this evening, kick off at 8 o'clock, and we'll talk more about the updates on this VAR outrage, and we'll also have a chat about the West London derby. We'll talk about all of that later this evening, but thanks very much for joining, and we'll see you very soon.